The sun was already peeking through the curtains when Amina woke up. She stretched her arms and yawned, but the moment she moved her legs, her heart sank. The familiar dampness was there. Her bed was wet again. "No, no, no," she whispered, throwing off the covers. She sat up quickly, feeling the coldness against her skin. Tears burned at the back of her eyes, but she blinked them away. She had hoped, just for once, that last night would be different. She pulled her knees to her chest and stared at the stained bedsheet. The smell was unmistakable. She felt like a child again, helpless and ashamed. But she wasn't a child. She was 30 years old. She swallowed the lump in her throat and stood up. Moving quickly, she stripped the sheets off the bed, rolling them into a bundle. Her mattress was stained again. No matter how many times she cleaned it, the marks remained. Amina sighed and carried the wet sheets to the bathroom. She turned on the tap, filling a bucket with soapy water. As she scrubbed, her mind raced. "What is wrong with me?" she muttered under her breath. It wasn't like she hadn't tried to stop it. She avoided drinking water before bed. She went to the toilet 3 times before sleeping. She had even used alarms to wake herself up during the night, but nothing worked. She washed the sheets with furious energy, as if scrubbing hard enough could erase her shame. Suddenly there was a knock on her bedroom door. Amina? Panic rushed through her. She quickly grabbed a towel and threw it over the mattress before hurrying to the door. She cracked it open, forcing a smile. "Yes, Mama?" Her mother, a short woman with sharp eyes, looked at her suspiciously. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Amina said quickly. Her mother's eyes flickered past her, scanning the room. Amina knew what she was looking for. "Did it happen again?" her mother asked, lowering her voice. Amina clenched her jaw. "Mama, please." Her mother sighed and stepped back. "We need to talk. Finish what you're doing and come to the living room." Amina closed the door and leaned against it, squeezing her eyes shut. She hated that look in her mother's eyes, pity mixed with disappointment. She finished washing the sheets and hung them outside, hoping the sun would dry them quickly. By the time she entered the living room, her mother was already sitting on the couch, waiting. Amina sat opposite her, dreading the conversation. Her mother exhaled deeply. "Amina, you're 30 years old. Do you know how many marriage proposals we have turned away because of this?" Amina looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting together. She knew. "No man wants a wife who still wets the bed," her mother continued. "People are starting to talk. They say you are cursed." Amina's stomach twisted. She had heard the whispers. She had seen the way neighbors looked at her. "But I can't control it, Mama," she whispered. "I've tried everything." Her mother softened, but only slightly. "We need to find a solution. You can't live like this forever." Amina didn't reply. She had spent years searching for a solution. If there was one, she would have found it by now. Her mother stood up. "I'm going to call Sheikh Ibrahim. Maybe there's a spiritual cure." Amina's head shot up. "No, Mama, I don't want—" Her mother raised a hand. "Enough. You will not argue with me. This has gone on for too long." Amina bit her lip. She wanted to protest, to beg her mother not to involve outsiders, but she knew it was useless. As her mother walked away, Amina felt a deep, sinking feeling in her chest. Was there truly no hope for her? Amina sat in the back seat of her mother's car, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. She stared out of the window, watching the familiar streets of their neighborhood pass by. Children ran along the dusty road, laughing and playing. Women stood by their gates, chatting and gossiping. She knew what they would say if they found out where she was going. "She's cursed. She's not normal. No man will ever take her." Her mother drove in silence, her lips pressed into a firm line. Amina knew she meant well, but this felt like another reminder that she was broken. They arrived at a small compound surrounded by high walls. Her mother parked the car and stepped out. Amina hesitated before following her. Inside, an old man sat on a wooden chair under a tree. He wore a long white robe and a matching cap. His beard was thick and grey, his eyes sharp. Sheikh Ibrahim. Her mother bowed her head slightly in greeting. "Sheikh, thank you for seeing us." The old man nodded. "What brings you here, my daughter?" Her mother nudged Amina forward. She swallowed her shame and spoke in a small voice. "I have a problem, Sheikh. Speak, child. Allah listens." Amina hesitated, then whispered, I wet the bed." The words felt like knives in her throat. Sheikh Ibrahim did not react. He only nodded and asked, "How long?" Amina replied, "My whole life." The sheikh studied her for a long moment, then turned to her mother and asked, "Have you taken her to a doctor?" Her mother sighed and said, "Many times they say nothing is wrong." Sheikh Ibrahim stroked his beard and asked, "Have you tried herbal treatments, special prayers?" Her mother responded, "We have tried everything." Amina stared at the ground, wanting to disappear. The sheikh finally spoke. "There's no curse on this girl." Amina's head snapped up. Her mother frowned and asked, "Are you sure?" The sheikh replied, "She is not cursed. This is a test from Allah, not a punishment." Amina felt something tighten in her chest. A test, not a curse. Her mother said, "But Sheikh, she cannot marry like this. No man will accept her." The old man nodded and said, "Then perhaps marriage is not her path right now." Amina blinked, wondering if that was even an option. Her mother shook her head and said, "But she is a woman. She needs a husband." The sheikh raised a hand and said, "What she needs is to accept herself. Tell me, child, do you believe you are worth love even with this condition?" Amina's throat tightened. No one had ever asked her that before. She lowered her gaze and said, "I don't know." The sheikh sighed and responded, "Then that is where you must begin." Her mother looked unsatisfied, but she stayed quiet. Sheikh Ibrahim turned back to Amina. "My daughter, your condition does not define you. There may still be a cure, or there may not be, but you must not let shame consume you." Amina swallowed hard. For years she had only thought about how to fix herself. It had never occurred to her that maybe, just maybe, she was still whole, even like this. She wasn't sure if she believed it yet, but for the first time in a long time she felt a small spark of hope. That night Amina lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The sheikh's words echoed in her mind. "Do you believe you are worth love even with this condition?" She had spent so many years hiding, feeling ashamed. But what if she had been wrong? What if she could live a full life even with her problem? She turned to look at the clock. 2:30 a.m. The fear crept in again. If she fell asleep, would she wake up to another wet bed? But tonight felt different, maybe because for the first time, someone had told her she wasn't cursed. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes and let herself sleep. Morning came. Amina woke up slowly, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face. She didn't move at first, afraid to check. Then, with a deep breath, she lifted the covers. Dry. Her heart pounded. She pressed her hands against the mattress, waiting for the usual cold, damp feeling. Nothing. She sat up quickly, her breath coming fast. Could it be? Was this real? She ran to the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. For the first time in a long time, she didn't see the broken girl she thought she was. She saw hope. Downstairs, her mother was in the kitchen making tea. Amina hesitated, then spoke. "Mama?" Her mother looked up. "Yes?" Amina continued, "I want to do something different with my life." Her mother frowned. "What do you mean?" "I can't keep waiting for marriage to make me feel whole," Amina said, her voice steadier than she expected. "I want to build my own life first." Her mother put down the spoon she was holding. "Amina, you know I only want what's best for you." "I know," Amina said, "but I think I need to find out what's best for myself too." Her mother was silent for a long moment, then slowly she nodded. "All right, what do you want to do?" Amina took a deep breath. "I want to go back to school." Amina smiles, feeling hopeful. She reflects, "I never finished my studies because I thought marriage was the only future for me. But now I want more. I want to have choices." Her mother's eyes softened and she said, If this is what you truly want, then I will support you." Amina felt tears sting her eyes. She had expected resistance, but instead she found acceptance. Maybe, just maybe, her life was just beginning. Amina stood outside the college gates, gripping her bag tightly. The campus was buzzing with students, their laughter and chatter filling the air. Some were young, fresh out of high school. Others, like her, were older, returning to complete what they had left behind. She took a deep breath. This was it, the new beginning she had asked for.
I got an idea.
Her mother had been hesitant at first, but after seeing how determined Amina was, she had agreed to help pay for her tuition. "If this is your path, walk it with confidence," she had said that morning. And now, standing there, Amina wasn't so sure she was ready. She shook her head. "No, I will not doubt myself." Lifting her chin, she stepped forward. Inside, she found the administration office and handed over her documents. The woman behind the desk glanced at her. "You're a mature student?" she asked. Amina nodded. The woman smiled. "You're not alone. Many are coming back to study these days." Amina felt a bit of relief. Maybe she wouldn't stand out as much as she feared. After finishing the registration, she received her class schedule and a map of the campus. She had officially taken the first step. Her first class was in a lecture hall. She hesitated at the door, scanning the rows of seats. Most of the students were chatting in groups. She suddenly felt out of place. Then a girl waved at her. "Hey, are you new?" Amina blinked. The girl had a warm smile and bright eyes. "Yes," Amina said, hesitating. "Come sit here. I'm Halima." Amina slowly walked over and sat next to her. "What's your name?" Halima asked. "Amina. Nice to meet you, Amina." Amina felt a small smile forming. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. As the lecture began, she opened her notebook, ready to learn. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't thinking about her past. She was thinking about her future.
Amina sat in the campus library, flipping through the pages of her textbook. She had forgotten how exhausting studying could be. It had been years since she last sat in a classroom, and now she was struggling to keep up. The words on the page blurred. No matter how hard she tried, the information refused to stick in her mind. With a sigh, she closed the book and leaned back. Maybe this was a mistake.
"You look like your brain is about to explode. Here, you look like you need it."
Thanks.
Tough day?
I feel like I'm too old for this. Everyone else seems to understand things so quickly.
Who told you learning has an age limit?
No one, but it feels like it.
Listen, Amina. You are here for a reason. If you weren't meant to be here, you wouldn't have made it this far.
She wanted to believe that.
Come on, let's study together. Maybe it'll help.
Amina hesitated, then nodded. As they went through the material, Halima explained things in a way that finally made sense. For the first time, Amina felt like she was catching up.
See, you're smarter than you think.
Maybe she wasn't too old for this after all.
Amina hurried across the campus, clutching her bag tightly. Her heart pounded as she checked the time. 8:15 a.m. She was late. Her first exam was today and the worst had happened. She had overslept.
You're late, Miss Amina.
I'm sorry.
The exam paper was already on her desk. She took a deep breath and picked up her pen. But as she read the first question, her stomach twisted. Her mind went blank. No matter how hard she tried to recall what she had studied, the answers wouldn't come. Her fingers trembled as she wrote down a few words, but they made no sense. Calm down, Amina. She forced herself to breathe slowly, trying to focus. Minutes passed, then an hour. When the lecturer finally called for papers to be submitted, Amina felt a wave of panic. She hadn't even answered half the questions. As she walked out of the classroom, her chest tightened. She had failed.
How was the exam? No matter what happens, you tried. And that means you're already winning.
Amina sighed. She didn't want to reply. She felt like a failure. Then, another message came. Amina blinked. She had been so focused on the failure that she forgot one thing. She had shown up. She had tried. Maybe that was enough for today. She put the phone down and lay back. Tomorrow was another day, and she wasn't giving up. Amina sat outside on a wooden bench, staring at the results board. Her breath caught in her throat as she searched for her name. There it was. Amina Yusuf, 39%. Her heart sank. She had failed. She closed her eyes, fighting back the sting of tears. She had worked so hard, stayed up late studying, and still it wasn't enough.
You're being too hard on yourself.
I failed, Halima.
So, it's just one exam.
What if I fail again?
Then you'll study harder and try again. That's how life works.
I feel like I'm not good enough.
Stop saying that. You started this journey because you wanted more for yourself, right?
Nodded.
Then prove it. Prove to yourself that you belong here.
I need to talk to Mr. Kamau.
That's the spirit. Miss Amina, what can I do for you?
Sir, I failed the exam, but I don't want to give up. Can you help me improve?
Come to my office every evening, I'll guide you.
Really?
You have potential, Amina. You just need to believe in yourself.
Thank you, sir.
As she left the office, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Determination. This wasn't the end, it was only the beginning. Amina sat in Mr. Kamau's office, flipping through her notes. It had been 2 weeks since she started attending his extra tutoring sessions, and she could already feel the difference. The equations that once confused her now made sense. The theories she used to struggle with were starting to click. Mr. Kamau, you've improved a lot, Amina. It's because of your help, sir. Mr. Kamau, no, Amina. It's because you refuse to give up. She let the words sink in. A few weeks ago, she had wanted to quit. Now, she was beginning to believe that she could do this. Her next big test came sooner than expected. As she sat in the exam hall, she felt her heart pounding. But this time, she wasn't afraid. She took a deep breath and focused. The first question looked familiar. Amina, I know this one. She picked up her pen and began to write. The time passed quickly, but she didn't panic. When the lecturer finally called for papers, Amina put down her pen with a sense of satisfaction. She had done her best. The results were posted a week later. Amina held her breath as she scanned the list. Then she saw it. Amina Yusuf, 76%. Her hands trembled. She had passed. Tears welled in her eyes. She had done it. Amina, did you see your score? I told you, you belong here. Amina, for the first time in years, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Pride. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was winning. Amina stretched and yawned as she entered her room after a long day. She had spent hours in the library, preparing for her upcoming finals. Her body ached from exhaustion, but inside, she felt proud. She was finally proving to herself that she belonged here. After changing into her nightgown, she lay on her bed and sighed in relief. Her eyes fluttered shut, and soon she was fast asleep. The cold, damp feeling woke her. Amina's heart stopped. No, not again. She slowly reached down, dreading what she already knew. Her bed was wet, the shame hit her like a wave. Tears burned in her eyes as she sat up, her hands shaking. She had gone weeks without an accident. She thought it was over. She thought she was finally free. Amina, why is this happening to me? She wanted to scream. Instead, she got up quietly, grabbed fresh sheets, and changed her bed. She scrubbed her skin in the bathroom, trying to wash away the humiliation. But the worst part wasn't the bedwetting. It was the fear that no matter how much she achieved, this would always follow her. The next morning, Amina sat in class, her mind elsewhere. She barely heard the lecturer. Halima, hey, you okay? Amina, yeah, just tired. Halima, you sure? Amina, I'm fine. Halima didn't look convinced but didn't push. The secret burden. As Amina stared at her empty notebook, one thought haunted her.
What if I never escape this?
Amina sat alone in her room, staring at her hands. The shame from last night still clung to her like a heavy blanket. She had worked so hard to change her life, but this one thing, kept pulling her back. She needed answers. Taking a deep breath, she picked up her phone and searched. Adult bedwetting causes and treatment. A list of articles appeared. She clicked on one and began to read. Possible causes: stress and anxiety, overactive bladder, hormonal imbalance, sleep disorders. Amina frowned. Stress? She had been studying non-stop, barely sleeping, and constantly worrying about exams. Could that be the reason? She clicked on another article. Tips to manage and reduce bedwetting. Limit fluids before bed. Train your bladder by spacing bathroom trips. Use relaxation techniques to reduce stress. Seek medical advice if it persists. Amina bit her lip. She had never talked to a doctor about this seriously. Maybe it was time. The next day she made her way to the campus clinic. Her hands trembled as she filled out the form. When the nurse called her name, she hesitated, but then she reminded herself she had come too far to let fear win. Inside, a female doctor smiled warmly at her.
What brings you here today?
I have a problem. I wet the bed sometimes.
She expected shock, pity, but the doctor just nodded.
How often does it happen?
Not all the time, but it happened again last night.
Amina, you are not alone. Many adults struggle with this, and there are solutions.
Really?
Let's do some tests and see what's going on.
For the first time in a long time, Amina felt something new. Hope. She wasn't broken, and maybe, just maybe, she could heal. Amina stared at her phone, her fingers trembling as she read the text from Tarek.
I can't wait to see you tonight. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Her heart fluttered in her chest. She had been seeing Tarek for the past few months, and everything was going well. He was kind, understanding, and made her feel seen in a way no one ever had. But there was always that voice in her head.
The one that whispered, what if he finds out? What if he sees the real me? The one with a flaw that seems impossible to fix? What if it happens tonight?
She shoved the thought aside, determined not to let fear control her. Tonight she would be just like any other woman. She would enjoy herself, laugh, and maybe, just maybe, allow herself to feel normal. When Amina arrived at Tarek's apartment, she was greeted with a warm hug and a soft kiss on the cheek. He had cooked dinner, a simple meal of pasta and salad. She smiled, feeling a little lighter. They ate together, chatting about their days. He made her laugh with his jokes, and for a while it was easy to forget her worries. Later they sat on the couch watching a movie. As the film played, Amina could feel herself getting drowsy. She had been working so hard lately, and the comfort of Tarek's presence was soothing. She glanced at the clock. It was late.
Maybe I should head home.
But as she stood up, something shifted inside her. She didn't want to leave, she wanted to stay. She wanted to be close to him. She sat back down, trying to steady her nerves. Tarek smiled and pulled her closer, his arm around her.
I'm glad you're here, Amina.
She smiled and leaned into him. Maybe this could be the moment when everything felt right, but as she relaxed against him, she felt it, that familiar horrible sensation. Amina's blood turned cold.
No, 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 no.
Her heart raced as she realized what had just happened. The bedwetting. Her worst nightmare was coming true. She pulled away from Tarek quickly, trying to act casual, but she could feel the dampness. The fear rushed in like a storm, and she couldn't control her breathing. Tarek looked at her, confusion in his eyes.
Amina?
I think I just need to go to the bathroom.
She rushed to the bathroom, locking the door behind her. Her hands shook as she stripped off her clothes and tried to compose herself.
How could this be happening?
She could hear Tarek calling her softly from the other side of the door.
Amina, are you okay?
Amina bit her lip, trying not to break down. She couldn't face him like this. She couldn't let him see her weakness. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the shower, trying to wash away her shame. She could hear the water running, the sound almost masking the thoughts swirling in her head.
He will never look at me the same way again. I'm disgusting. I'm a failure.
After what felt like an eternity, she stepped out, feeling exhausted. She grabbed the towel and dried herself off, but she knew she couldn't stay. She couldn't stay here, not with this shame weighing on her. She opened the bathroom door slowly, stepping back into the living room. Tarek was sitting on the couch looking concerned.
Amina, what's going on? You've been in there a long time.
I'm sorry, Tarek. I think I should go.
What? Why? Amina, talk to me.
I can't stay here.
Tarek walked toward her, his hand gently touching her arm.
Amina, please. What happened? I'm not going to judge you.
You don't understand. I can't.
Her voice broke.
Amina, please, let me help you. Whatever it is, we can work through it together.
But Amina could only think about the shame she felt, the humiliation, the one thing she could never escape.
I'm sorry, I have to go.
Without waiting for a response, she grabbed her things and left his apartment. The cool night air hit her like a slap in the face as she hurried down the street. She didn't know where she was going. She just needed to get away. Later that night, Amina sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the walls. The tears wouldn't stop. She had pushed away the one person who had made her feel seen.
How could I let him see me like that?
She picked up her phone and stared at the screen. Tarek's number was there, but she couldn't bring herself to call him. Not now. She wasn't sure if she would ever be able to face him again. The bedwetting had taken so much from her, and now, it had taken away her chance at something real. Amina sat at the edge of her bed, staring at the phone in her hands. She had avoided Tarek's calls all week, too ashamed to face him after what happened that night. He had tried to reach her multiple times, leaving messages, asking if she was okay. But each time her fingers hovered over the screen, too afraid to respond. She felt suffocated by the weight of the shame she had carried with her for years.
How could I be so stupid?
The bedwetting had always been her secret burden, something she could hide in the quiet of her own home. But now, it was out in the open. It had destroyed her moment with Tarek, and it seemed like no matter how hard she tried, it would never stop haunting her. Her phone buzzed again, another message from Tarek.
Amina, please? We need to talk. I'm here for you, just like I said. Don't shut me out.
Her heart ached, and a tear slipped down her cheek. She wanted to reach out to him. She wanted to tell him everything. But the fear of being rejected, of him seeing her as weak, was too much to bear. She put the phone down, wiping her eyes.
I have to keep going. I can't let this be the end of everything.
The next day, she returned to school, trying to keep her mind off Tariq and the mess she had made. She attended her classes, focused on her work, and tried to act like everything was normal. But inside, she felt the weight of the bedwetting like never before. It happened again that night. She woke up in the middle of the night to that same cold, damp feeling, the feeling that always made her stomach drop. Tears pricked her eyes as she rushed to the bathroom, her hands shaking. She scrubbed herself clean, but no matter how many times she washed away the physical evidence, the shame remained. She hadn't told anyone about this. No one in her life knew what she struggled with. Even her mother, who had always been there for her, had no idea.
She couldn't bring herself to tell her. What would she think of me?
Amina sat on the bathroom floor, her face buried in her hands. She felt so alone, but then a thought cut through the dark fog in her mind.
Maybe I don't have to hide anymore.
The next morning, Amina sat in her room, staring at her phone once more. The temptation to reach out to Tariq was strong, but she still couldn't do it. She wasn't ready. Instead, she called her mother. Her heart raced as the phone rang.
Hello, Mum, I need to talk to you about something. Of course, sweetheart, what is it? I've been struggling with something. Something I've kept secret for a long time. What is it, my dear? I wet the bed sometimes.
There was a long silence. Amina's heart raced in her chest, waiting for her mother's response. Finally, her mother spoke.
Amina, why didn't you tell me sooner?
I didn't want to disappoint you. I thought it was something I could control. I thought it was just me being weak, but it's not. It's just happening. Sweetheart, you are not weak. There's nothing to be ashamed of. I wish you would have told me sooner. You don't have to carry this alone. We'll get through this together. You don't need to hide it. It's not something that defines you. Thank you, Mom. Always, my dear. Always. But despite the comfort her mother's words gave her, the bedwetting continued to plague Amina. It wasn't just an isolated incident, it was a recurring nightmare. One evening, after another unfortunate accident, Amina found herself at her lowest point. She felt utterly defeated. She had gone to doctors and specialists, had tried every trick she could find, but nothing was working. What's the point? The thoughts came crashing down. Maybe she was doomed to live with this forever. Maybe she wasn't meant to be happy. But just as she was about to give in to the darkness, her phone buzzed again. It was Tariq. Tariq. Amina, I don't know what's going on, but I can't keep guessing. I care about you, and I want to understand. Please, let me in. I'm here. Amina, I don't know what's going on, but I can't keep guessing. I care about you, and I want to understand. Please, let me in. I'm here. Amina, I'm so sorry, Tariq. I've been pushing you away because I'm scared. I've been carrying something I'm ashamed of, and I didn't want you to see me like this. I'm sorry, Tariq. Amina, I don't care about that. I care about you. Let me help you. We'll figure this out together. For the first time in a long time, Amina didn't feel like a failure. She felt like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone. Amina sat on the edge of her bed staring at the open window. The early morning light filtered through the curtains, but inside she still felt a sense of heaviness. The bedwetting hadn't stopped. It had only become more frequent, more painful. She could feel it in her bones, a constant reminder of her struggle. She had tried everything: doctor visits, medical tests, lifestyle changes, and even meditation. But the problem continued. Each time it happened, the shame weighed heavier on her heart. Despite her mother's support and Tariq's reassurances, Amina couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeper at play. This wasn't just a physical issue, it felt like it went beyond the surface. Could there be something more? The thought lingered in her mind, pushing her toward a place she had always avoided: her faith. Amina had grown up in a religious home, but over the years, she had drifted away from her spiritual roots. She had always believed in God, but her connection had become distant. The challenges in her life seemed to overshadow her faith. And now, in this moment of despair, she wondered if it was time to turn back to the beliefs she had once held close. Her heart ached as she thought of her grandmother, who had always told her that spiritual matters affect the physical. The old woman had spoken of how unresolved spiritual issues could manifest as problems in the body, physical pain, mental anguish, or even conditions like bedwetting. Amina had dismissed it all in the past, thinking it was just superstition. But now, something inside her urged her to look deeper. That afternoon, Amina sat in her room, with a Bible in her hands, something she hadn't done in a long time. She flipped through the pages, her mind racing. What am I even looking for? Her fingers landed on a verse in Psalm 34:18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. A tear slipped down Amina's cheek. She felt it. There was something in that verse. It wasn't just a comforting thought, it was a promise. God, I don't know what's causing this. I don't understand why this is happening to me, but I trust that you can help me. Please heal me from the inside out. I need your strength. It wasn't a grand prayer. It wasn't filled with long words or rituals. It was just her, in that moment, asking for help. Maybe I don't need to have all the answers right now. Maybe I just need to trust. The days that followed were not easy. There were nights when the bedwetting continued, and Amina struggled with the same shame and embarrassment she had always felt. But this time, she was determined to handle it differently. Each time she faced the problem, she reminded herself of what she had learned through her prayer and the verse she had read. She didn't have to fight this alone. Sweetheart, you're doing so well. I can see the strength in you. I know this is difficult, but you are not defined by this. And I believe God is working in your life even in this. I know, Mom. I know it's just part of the process. I'm not giving up. Is there something spiritual that I haven't addressed? Is there something deeper within me that I need to confront? That night, as she lay in bed, she thought back to her grandmother's teachings, the spiritual matters that could affect the physical body, the idea that unresolved emotional wounds, past traumas, or even negative spiritual forces could have physical consequences. She remembered how her grandmother would often say, "The things we carry in our hearts can manifest in our lives in ways we don't always understand." Amina realized that maybe this bedwetting wasn't just physical. Maybe it was a manifestation of something that hadn't been healed inside her. The anxiety, the years of trying to prove herself, the fear of rejection, and the shame. Perhaps these were the things she had never fully dealt with. The next week, Amina took another step toward understanding. She reached out to a spiritual mentor from her church. Her name was Sister Grace, a woman who had always been an example of strength and wisdom. Amina hesitated but then poured out her heart. She told Sister Grace about the bedwetting, the shame, the fear, and the sense that something spiritual might be at play. Sister Grace offered to pray with her. Sister Grace, let's pray together. Let's ask God to bring healing to your heart, to release the shame, and to restore what was broken. As they prayed, Amina felt a sense of release. She could feel the weight lifting off her shoulders, the burden that had been building for years starting to loosen. She didn't have all the answers, but she felt the peace that came with surrendering her fears and her pain to God. Though the road was still long, Amina felt stronger. The bedwetting didn't stop overnight, but she began to see improvements. And more importantly, she felt a shift inside. She wasn't running from her past anymore. She was beginning to heal. She knew that her journey wasn't just about solving a physical issue. It was about dealing with the spiritual roots of her pain and allowing herself to embrace the fullness of who she was, without shame. The road ahead might still be challenging, but Amina now knew that she had the strength and the support to navigate it. And with each step, she was learning to trust that healing, both physical and spiritual, would come in its own time. For weeks, she had prayed and sought guidance. The bedwetting had persisted, but there was a part of her that knew, deep down, that there was something more to it, something hidden. Sister Grace had been kind, offering gentle advice, but Amina couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that there was a deeper reason behind this. The physical explanation didn't seem to cover it all. Amina's heart raced as she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sister Grace, I need to ask you something. I've been praying and seeking God, but there's something that still doesn't sit right with me." Sister Grace looked at her with understanding. "What do you feel, Amina?" "It's this bedwetting. I've tried everything, medically, physically, even spiritually, but it still comes back. I keep thinking there's something I haven't uncovered, something I haven't faced." You're right, Amina. Sometimes the physical struggles we face are a reflection of something deeper, something hidden in our hearts or past. But healing isn't just about addressing the symptoms, it's about uncovering the root. The root? What does that even mean? There are spiritual forces at work in our lives that we often don't see. Sometimes trauma, fear, or even unresolved anger can cause these kinds of issues. But there's also something called spiritual oppression, things in our past, our environment, or even things spoken over us that can take root and affect us physically. Spiritual oppression? What do you mean? Sometimes, Amina, people don't even realize that things spoken over them, negative words, curses, or even unresolved conflict, can linger in the spirit. It's like they attach themselves, and over time, they manifest as physical ailments or emotional struggles. Amina's heart skipped a beat. Curses? Could that be the cause? Sister Grace nodded, as if reading Amina's thoughts. It may sound strange, but the power of words is strong, and spiritual forces can bind us in ways we don't fully understand. In your case, the bedwetting could be a manifestation of something deeper, a brokenness in your heart, something unresolved. Amina's mind flashed back to her childhood. Her father had been distant, often cold and unapproachable. Her mother had tried her best to care for her, but there were long stretches when Amina had felt invisible. The memories of being overlooked, of never quite feeling good enough, flooded her thoughts. Is that it? Could all of this feeling of never being enough, have caused something like this to manifest? Amina, sometimes we carry burdens from our past that we don't realize are still affecting us. It could be something from your childhood, an unresolved trauma, or even words spoken over you by someone close to you. These things can linger in the spirit, and they can manifest physically. Amina felt a lump form in her throat. She had never thought of it that way. The past was full of unresolved pain and emotions, things she had never confronted. Sister Grace's voice echoed in Amina's mind. The solution isn't just physical or medical, it's spiritual. You need to confront the past, forgive, and release whatever has been holding you captive. Only then can you experience true healing. Amina's mind raced. Forgive, release, but how? Sister Grace's tone was gentle yet firm. You see, Amina, the healing you seek will come when you deal with the roots, when you forgive those who may have hurt you, when you let go of the shame, the anger, the fear. Those are the things that bind us and prevent us from moving forward. And until you break free from them, the symptoms may continue to show up. Amina felt a wave of emotion wash over her. Forgive? Can I really do that? Forgiveness isn't about the other person, it's about releasing yourself. It's about choosing peace, healing, and freedom. It's not easy, but it is necessary. The following days were a blur for Amina. She spent long hours reflecting, praying, and meditating on the things Sister Grace had said. The weight of her past, the unresolved issues, the silent anger, and the fear of not being good enough became clearer to her. She thought about her father's coldness, how it had shaped her view of herself, how she had always tried to prove her worth, even though deep down she didn't believe she was valuable. She had carried this need to be perfect for so long, thinking it was the only way to be accepted. Is that what's been causing this? The idea of confronting these feelings was terrifying. The thought of forgiving her father, of releasing the anger she had held for so many years, felt impossible, but she knew she had to try. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. God, I don't know if I can do this, but I need your help. I need to forgive. I need to release the pain. In that quiet moment, Amina began to pray for forgiveness, not for her father's sake, but for her own healing. She prayed for the strength to let go of the bitterness that had been eating away at her for so long. And then she whispered a prayer for her father, asking God to heal the relationship between them, to restore what had been broken. As she prayed, she felt a release. Something inside her that had been tight and heavy for years seemed to loosen. The burden she had carried for so long began to feel lighter. But Amina knew that the road to healing wasn't over. It wasn't just about forgiveness. It was about confronting the negative beliefs she had carried. Beliefs that had shaped how she viewed herself. She had to choose to believe she was worthy, even when her father hadn't made her feel that way. The bedwetting might not disappear overnight, but Amina knew she had begun the work. She had confronted the root of the problem, the hidden spiritual force that had been silently affecting her, and now, she was ready to face whatever came next. It had been weeks since Amina had begun her journey of spiritual healing. Each day was a step forward, and though the path was not always easy, she was beginning to feel lighter, more at peace. The bedwetting had started to happen less frequently, and even though she still feared the worst every time she woke up in the morning, there was a growing sense of hope within her. Amina had spent the past few days reflecting on the powerful prayer and the emotional release that had come with confronting her past. Forgiving her father hadn't been easy, but she knew it was a crucial part of her healing. She felt as though a long-held weight had been lifted off her chest, and for the first time in years, she wasn't running from her emotions. She still had moments of doubt, moments when the old insecurities crept in, but she had learned to take them in stride, not letting them control her. With the support of her mother, Sister Grace, and even Tarek, she was learning how to navigate her challenges with grace and faith. One afternoon, Amina sat at her desk, flipping through a book for her graduate studies, but her mind kept drifting back to the past few weeks. She had come a long way in her journey, but she was still unsure about her next steps. She knew she was stronger, but there was still something lingering in her heart, a longing for something more. A knock on the door broke her from her thoughts. She looked up and saw Tarek standing in the doorway, his usual warm smile spreading across his face. "Hi Amina," he said, stepping inside. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Amina's heart skipped a beat. It had been a while since they had seen each other in person. Their conversations had been mostly over the phone, and she had taken things slow, still unsure of how to move forward. But there was something about Tarek's presence that always brought her a sense of calm. "No, you're not interrupting," Amina replied, smiling softly. "I'm just going over some work." Tarek walked over and took a seat next to her. He seemed different too, calmer, more at peace. The time they had spent apart had allowed both of them to grow in ways they hadn't expected. Amina's heart fluttered at his words. She had always been afraid that he would see her as weak because of the struggles she had faced, but his words filled her with a warmth she hadn't expected. Tarek nodded, his eyes soft. Amina felt a wave of emotion well up inside her. It wasn't just the bedwetting that had kept her from fully embracing love. It had been her fears, her doubts, her shame. But with Tarek by her side, she was starting to see the possibility of something different, something beautiful. "Thank you, Tarek," she whispered, "for being patient with me, for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." "You're stronger than you know, Amina, and you don't need to be perfect for me. I love you for who you are, not for what you think you should be." Tears filled Amina's eyes as she squeezed his hand. This was the love she had always longed for. The kind that didn't judge, that didn't need perfection. It was a love that was willing to heal, to grow, and to face the hard things together. I've been scared, Tarek. Scared of letting anyone see the parts of me that are broken, scared of being judged. Tarek's face is full of conviction as he reassures Amina, his eyes locked on hers. "You don't have to be afraid with me," Tarek replied, his voice steady and full of conviction. "I love you, Amina, and I want to spend my life with you, all of you." Amina's heart swelled as she met his gaze. She had spent so long trying to be someone she wasn't, running from her pain, hiding the parts of herself that she thought were unlovable. But here was Tarek, standing before her, offering his love without condition. "Tarek," Amina said, her voice trembling, "I've learned so much in these past few months, and I want to move forward with you, to let go of the fear and the shame. I want to build something real with you." Tarek's eyes light up as he stands up and pulls Amina into a hug, then steps back to look at her. He says, "Amina, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" Amina's face is a mix of shock, joy, and relief as she looks into Tarek's eyes. She felt a rush of emotions flood through her as she pulled back to look into his eyes. She had never imagined that after all the struggles, the heartache, and the uncertainty, she would find herself standing here with the man she loved, ready to take this step forward. With tears streaming down her cheeks, Amina whispers, "Yes, Tarek, yes, I will marry you." The months that followed were a whirlwind of joy, preparation, and healing. Amina and Tarek worked together to plan their wedding, but more importantly, they worked together to build a future filled with love, trust, and understanding. Amina continued her journey of healing. She attended therapy sessions, worked through the emotional wounds from her past, and continued her spiritual growth. Slowly but surely, the bedwetting became a thing of the past. She still had moments of doubt, but she learned to speak those doubts out loud, share them with Tarek, and find strength in their love. When their wedding day finally arrived, Amina stood in front of the mirror, wearing her beautiful white dress. She looked at herself, truly seeing the woman she had become. She was no longer the broken girl who had feared rejection. She was strong, whole, and loved. As she walked down the aisle, her heart swelled with gratitude. Tarek was waiting for her at the altar, his eyes full of love and joy. In that moment, Amina knew that all of her struggles, all of her fears, had led her here, to this moment of complete and utter peace. They exchanged vows, their hearts united in a promise to love and support one another through everything life would throw their way. And as they sealed their vows with a kiss, Amina realized that she had finally found the freedom she had always sought. She was enough, she was worthy, and she was loved. With Tarek by her side, Amina knew that no matter what challenges they faced, they would face them together. And as she looked ahead to their future, she couldn't help but smile, knowing that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in their lives.